Welcome to the Relay. I'm Tim Veersing alongside with my friends Daniel and Sergio as we get out the blocks with our first episode on YouTube. On today's episode, we'll discuss the insane trades that happened yesterday, the NBA Finals as we're a day away from tip-off, some exciting players at this year's FIFA World Cup, and our picks for the 2026 Stanley Cup Finals. Follow us on @TheRelayMedia on X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, along with Threads as well, as we'll be uploading content all summer long. So sit back, relax, and let's run the relay. All right, let's start it right off the top with one of the craziest trades that I have ever seen happen, with Myles Garrett going to the Rams. I think when you talk about generational players in their prime heading to contenders, you can really count on your fingers how many times it's really happened. And for the Rams to receive Myles Garrett was just one of the craziest days for me. We started the whole brand yesterday, and I was scrambling trying to get videos out on what I should record about this. Let's talk about the trade itself. The Rams get Myles Garrett, and the Browns, they will get Jared Verse, which is a great young piece on the defensive line, and they're also going to get 3 first-round picks. So they get the 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. And off tops, I wanted to get your guys' opinions on which team do you think kind of came out better of this. I think it's easy to kind of say that Myles Garrett is on the team, and therefore that's going to be better. But when you look at the haul that the Browns got, do you guys think that was sufficient enough? Do you guys think that this was an even trade, or do you think this kind of like leaned one way or the other? We'll start with Daniel.
Me personally, I think it was a bit of a fleece on the Rams end, just for the fact that you were able to only give up 1 first for a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, reigning Defensive Player of the Year at that. So just the fact that only 1 first-round pick, and you lost a decent linebacker, but you got the best defensive player in maybe not in our times, but
I mean,
I guess
yesterday I called him the best defensive end in the 21st century. I think it's no argument about that.
You see, me being a Steelers fan, it's hard for me to say that. But I am glad he's out of my division now, so I don't have to worry about that no more.
Yeah. Sergio?
Yeah, I think you could look at this in 2 ways for these teams. I mean, obviously short term, I think the Rams are going all in. Obviously, Seattle just won the Super Bowl. The San Francisco 49ers reloaded a bit in this past offseason, and now the Rams are making moves. They already added Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson to their defense, and their defense was already really good. So this is just showing for the short term they want to maximize Matthew Stafford's time with them. And then you look at it on the Browns side, they're still, I mean, it feels like they've always been preparing for the future, but they're preparing for the future with this trade. They got 3 picks. I thought they could have got a 2 first-round picks and like that second and third, but I think these picks seem sufficient enough. They got a haul basically, and Jared Verse on top of that, a great young edge rusher as well. So I think the Rams are setting themselves up for success, especially after they can get out of that Deshaun Watson deal and everything. So.
Yeah, for sure. I was on ESPN Fresno yesterday, and I was like, the Cardinals being in this division feels like a human rights violation. And I think whatever you just said is the reason why for that. I wanted to kind of switch it because I actually think that this is a pretty even trade. I think that the Browns, I love what they're doing. This last draft and the draft before that, getting the next generation for this team, it's kind of setting up this team to be ready for a quarterback. I think that a lot of the times you see teams that are in like high draft positions, they take quarterbacks way too early in the process, and they don't set them up for success. I think, prime examples is kind of like Josh Rosen when he went to the Cardinals. I think regardless of the player itself, because I don't know if Josh Rosen was ever better than any of the other players, even though he was confident in himself. I don't think he was ever set up for success there. And I think you see this all the time within franchises. And I think finally the Browns, you look at what they've added over the last couple of years through the draft. You got Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, two great wide receivers in this year's draft. You got Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson in last year's draft. And so that part of the field is kind of set. Harold Fannon's also on this team, who I really liked last year. And then the offensive line, Spencer Fano's an amazing add for an offensive line that I thought was kind of on a downturn, and I think they're going back up into that upper echelon of offensive lines. And then the defense, you don't even have to speak about the defense. That defense is ridiculous. They have the defensive rookie of the year in Carson Schlesinger. You get Jared Verse now, which obviously you're not in generational territory with Jared Verse, but he is going into his third year. On the Rams side of things, I think this is a complete game changer. You have a player in Myles Garrett that changes that defensive line from good to generational, and so I think that they're going to feast with that. I saw a stat the other day, and it was like Jared Verse, he had 7.5 sacks last year. He has, I believe, 12 sacks in his career, and between weeks 8 and 12 last year, Myles Garrett had 13 sacks. And that kind of talks to like what Daniel was talking about, how it's ridiculous that he's out of his division. So, happy days for you, right? But that just kind of goes to show the difference of this kind of player. And the last thing I wanted to talk about this was, I think Cleveland going into this next generation, what are your expectations now for both teams? But let's start specifically with Cleveland going into next year.
So with Cleveland, I'm still iffy about. Yeah, they've obviously drafted very well these past couple years, but I just don't. Obviously, last year didn't show the results. But my main issue is they have so many quarterbacks, but they can't seem to just choose who to pick, and that's the main problem of this
drafted
team.
Another one this year, the Taylor Green.
Exactly. So I don't. There's no consistency with this quarterback room, and I feel like that drives a lot of division in this locker room because they don't know who your quarterback is. Your leader, and the fact that you only have young guys in that locker room, and they're all fighting for this spot. I don't think it's a practical way to run a team. Joe Flacco was there, but Joe Flacco can only do so much.
What a run that was, right? Joe Flacco, Cleveland Browns. Yeah. I mean, that was just insane. Just elite. Bottle it up.
Only Browns quarterback I'll ever love.
That's funny. I mean, for me personally, I think the Browns' expectations goes up a little bit. I actually think that the way that they're set up right now, if Deshaun Watson can actually play this year, he's been looking good in OTAs. I might have them ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals, which is crazy for me to say because Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins is probably the best trio of quarterback and weapons out there. And I just hate what they've been doing over the last couple of drafts. But I think, with the young players that they have, that defense is still great. If they can get some sort of production out of that offense, I think I could see a world where they finish in the division third or even second, right? If the Steelers drop off this year. So
that's crazy.
That's kind of where I'm sitting in terms of the expectations for Browns. Sergio?
Yeah, I think if Deshaun Watson somehow reverts back to his Houston days, then maybe that could happen.
Houston Deshaun?
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen him on the field. Obviously, he's dealt with a variety of injuries and then all that off the field stuff too. And that's obviously affected his game. He hasn't been out on the field. He's rusty. But
yeah,
I still think he can be at least serviceable. I don't think there's any way that he could be worse than Dylan Gabriel was last year. So they can win some games. I think their defense is, kind of their whole identity right now. I like what they're doing there. Their line is solid. I think they did a decent job with, replacing all those players who had every contract expiring on that line. And then they brought in 2 young receivers as well. So it seems like they have a plan for everything else except the quarterback position, which I find kind of funny. But I mean, if they can land their
Yeah.
guy in this year's draft, then that kind of all goes away. And they're setting themselves up to do that a little bit with this trade. But I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how far down the draft how high in the draft they fall based on their quarterback play now.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about what the Rams are thinking, like their first round pick is going to be basically a second round pick. It's going to be the 32nd pick of the first round. That's what their expectation is. And so giving away that first round pick plus a second and a third, I think is fine for the Rams side of things. And I think for the Browns, I think it's kind of I like the way that they've done everything. I like the timeline. You get your offensive line, your defense is there already. Now you get the weapons, and I think finally this team is, as I said earlier, I think they're ready for a quarterback. It is quite funny the process that they've taken because now they have, I think, 4 quarterbacks on the roster again this year that are genuinely vying for those 3 spots, and they could end up in whatever order you can possibly think. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be on this team. I think the one guy, it's going to be between Taylor Green and Dylan Gabriel. I mean, we're going to talk about third string quarterbacks, but it's still going to be a thing because this team runs through quarterbacks like it's nobody's business. On the Rams side of things, I think it's an amazing move. As I said, Les Snead and Sean McVay have done this so well over the last couple of years, and as a Niners fan, I'm kind of jealous a little bit of that aspect of them because they have gone all in. They went all in 2021. They won their Super Bowl, and a lot of people thought that the year after when they absolutely tanked, they were probably going to be done for a very long time. And look at them. They've gotten some great value in later rounds. They were able to draft really well. And I think that's part of the reason why they are back. I mean, you get Puka Nacua in a later round. I think it was the 5th round, but I might be mistaken about that.
He was a later round pick.
You get, Kyron Williams and all of these offensive linemen in these later rounds, and now you're able to kind of stack upon an MVP quarterback with that's at the end of his career and try and go for another Super Bowl. So I think it's an absolute masterclass by Les Snead. I think that again, I think this defense becomes unguardable. I don't know how you're going to be able to block all of those guys. You still have Kobe Turner and Byron Young, and Poona Ford is still there. Braden Fisk is still there. And to add Myles Garrett to that is going to be disgusting. I wanted to ask you guys, where do you think that it is Super Bowl or bust for the Rams this year?
I'd say yes, only because I feel like this year will probably be Stafford's last full year. I think.
You think this is Stafford's last year? I think Stafford's probably going to play. I feel like Stafford can play one more year after this.
I think Stafford can too, but I feel like they would take more of the approach of trying to get Ty Simpson into that starting quarterback role next year.
Yeah.
With the mentoring and everything like that, I could see that coming into play, letting Stafford play half the season next year, and with Ty coming in later in. But that's all depending on how they're doing, season standings, everything like that. But yeah, I really do think it's Super Bowl or bust. But if they don't win, I think they have like a 3-year window.
Okay.
Yeah, I 100% think this is Super Bowl or bust for them. You don't make a move like this unless your goal is to win the entire thing that same year that you make a move like this. And then considering Stafford's age, I know they did extend him a couple more seasons, but he's getting up there in age. He is coming off of that MVP season as well, but showing he still has some left in the tank. But Stafford's a family guy. He might want to, hang it up after this year. They are already looking towards the future with their draft pick and Ty Simpson as well. So absolutely, this is 100% Super Bowl bust for them.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess it is a stupid question at the end of the day because, sure, I think when you have a player in a hall like this, they still have Trent McDuffie, which is crazy. That it is basically Super Bowl or bust, but, they got to the NFC Championship last year, and I just felt like they continue to just add talent to this team. And so that's where I question Super Bowl or bust because I do agree. I think their window just becomes that much more open. Going into the next couple of years. there's another trade that happened that I think kind of got lost in the sauce. It was the A.J. Brown to the Patriots trade. I mean, just to quickly hit on this, I think that this is, from the Patriots' perspective, Drake May gets his wide receiver one. And for a guy that I think has a beautiful outside the hashes ball, whether it's on go balls or out routes, I think A.J. Brown's going to feast in this offense. And now you have a trio of wide receivers in, you still have Kayshon Boutte back, and Romeo Doubs is on this team, along with the alpha in A.J. Brown, that I think he's going to get a boatload of targets there in New England. Do you guys think that he has an opportunity to be wide receiver one in terms of the receiving yards this year?
I think so. I think just because of what he's able to play, being able to, where he is, how good he is at the outside, I just think that is where Drake May throws best, in my opinion. And I think him being able to be a good route runner on the outside, just, getting open like he does, I think that makes him wide receiver one. I think he's better than what Stephon Diggs ever was for this team.
Oh, easily.
That's my opinion. But just in general, I think this suits him for his career as well as Drake May being able to just be a better quarterback.
I think Sergio froze up. Oh, no, he's right there. Well, anyways, I'll get to my thoughts on this. I think that for the Eagles' sake, I think that this is quite a peculiar kind of trade and draft, because you get Mekhi Lemon in the draft to be A.J. Brown's replacement per se, and I think that Mekhi Lemon is really good at running inside the hash routes, quick routes to the middle part of the field, and I think that's going to force Jalen Hurts to be a little bit of a different quarterback than he usually has been, right? And I think that with, Jalen Hurts having a little bit of a downturn in his accuracy, you saw that towards the latter end of the year, maybe he can pick it up this year, and maybe he does, change that offense around. But I think at the time frame that Jalen Hurts is in right now, I think it's going to be really difficult for the Eagles offense to replicate the highs that they had during that Super Bowl year with A.J. Brown. Sergio, do you think the same?
Yeah, 100%. I think A.J. Brown can be wide receiver one with them in terms of yards. The Patriots also signed Romeo Doubs, and that'll cut into the yardage, but I think he's easily the number one target for Drake May. Drake May hasn't had a receiver like this in his career, even if you go back to UNC. So I think absolutely. And then with the Eagles, like you mentioned, Jalen Hurts' accuracy dipped down a little bit. I think it's going to be a little bit of different play style because he's got two smaller receivers compared to A.J. Brown, so it's not really, obviously Devontae Smith can go up and get a ball every now and then, but it's not as for sure as, an A.J. Brown type of deal where you could just throw him a fade in the end zone corner.
Right.
So we'll see. It's still another huge question about
the Eagles went up and got Mekhi Lemon, right?
Yeah.
They traded up for him,
right? Yeah,
I think so.
And so you're kind of expecting him to be that for you, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. It's another question. It's another year of questions about this offense. I mean, we know what the defense is. Haven't really dipped down in consistency really at all. But you've got a rookie with a lot of talent, but he still has to prove himself in the league. And, a quarterback who's, still iffy. A lot of people are questioning whether he's even a top, 15, 20 quarterback in the league anymore. So it remains to be seen, how well this offense can run.
Yeah. And, I think that hopefully we'll get some more crazy trades as we go on along this week. But I think, the juice of how crazy yesterday is kind of all been squeezed. And I think that I don't know where else we can see a trade like those two happen in, the next couple of days. All right, let's move on to the NBA Finals. NBA Finals tip-off is tomorrow between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. New York Knicks and Spurs, they played against each other in the 1999 NBA Finals, and I was asked yesterday where I was in 1999, and I was -1. I wasn't even a thought, and you guys are younger than me, so I won't even ask where you guys were in 1999. But I think this is kind of, it mirrors what we saw in 99 in terms of the Spurs run. You had the Spurs in Tim Duncan in his first, I believe it was first playoff run in 99, go into New York and win that series. And then Wembanyama going into this year, going that same path, right? I think both teams did play Portland and Minnesota and on their way to the finals, and then played the Knicks in the NBA Finals. But regardless of that, I want to start with kind of breaking down what got both teams here. And let's start with the Knicks, right? The Knicks, they have only lost 2 games this entire playoff runs. They started off in their first round 4-2, a series win over the Atlanta Hawks. And then we got a sweep of the Philadelphia 76ers, which I thought that was completely unfair. And then the sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers, 4-0 series win against them. They've won, I believe, 11 games in a row. I think that's how many. Yeah, because they were down 2-1 in the Atlanta series, if I'm not mistaken. And now they've continued to win. And let's point out like one key that the Knicks have been really good at. And I'll start. I think the Knicks' 3-point shooting has been exceptional in these playoffs. I think that when you look at the margin of victory that the Knicks have put on teams over these last couple of years, or last couple of series, I should say, they have blown teams out through their 3-point shooting. I think Landry Shamet and Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson, all of these guys, Josh Hart, they're providing some amazing 3-point shooting to kind of extend leads. And then they're using, their back-end defense to kind of stop teams from coming back. And you saw Cleveland really, besides game 1, never got a groove for this series. And I think that's what I really like about what the Knicks have done. They've improved their 3-point shooting from series to series. And that's why they haven't lost in 10-plus games, right? Daniel, what do you think has been the best attribute for the Knicks?
Me personally, I think it's not only just been shooting, but just how they've managed their games so far. And how they'll probably continue to manage their games this final series. Because I think this team is a very, peaky team. I feel like, if they don't get going, it's going to be slow. Like, it's just not going to be the greatest basketball out there. But if that shooting does get going and that shooting gets hot, there's kind of no stopping that team. Because you saw with the Cavs and both the Sixers, just the way they were able to just go on hot streaks and just get out to these really big leads. And I feel like that's something that, San Antonio really hasn't seen. They saw it a little bit with OKC, but I don't think it's nearly similar to what, this Knicks team can do.
Yeah. Sergio?
Jalen Brunson. That's the main thing that's been, obviously all these other players are, propelling the team up, but Jalen Brunson going off for 40+ points, almost every night. It helps a lot. And then, the cat experiment has worked so far. I know there are a lot of questions about how he would fit on that team.
The big bodega.
Yeah. But his chemistry with Jalen Brunson is what's working, and they do all the little things on defense. OG Anunoby and Josh Hart and all those guys, like they get back there and they don't let up. So, but the main thing for me is Jalen Brunson for sure.
OG, that's crazy. Yeah, Jalen Brunson. I mean, insane. I thought that he's been the second best player in these playoffs, only behind his opponent, which we'll talk about in a second. But Jalen Brunson has been magical in this playoff run. I think that he's kind of solidified himself in the top 10 players of the NBA. And I think that the New York Knicks, with Mike Brown, former Kings player, which there's a lot of Kings players that are Kings coach. There's a lot of Kings staff and players that are heading into the finals these last 2 years. That just adds to their dread, right? But we won't talk about that for the sake of Kings fans. Mike Brown, I think, has his team playing really well. And I think for his legacy, I think if he were to win the NBA championship, I think that kind of changes the narrative around Mike Brown. You know, this guy's been around the league for a long time, hasn't really reached the heights of the teams that he's coached. And I think that he finally, in this playoff run, can finally get something done and win the championship, especially for a team that hasn't won a championship in such a long time. If he were to come to New York and win a championship, I think that just puts a notch in his career that you can rarely see from other coaches or staff members. On the Spurs side of things, I think what I've really liked about this team, the perimeter defense by guys like Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Dylan Harper, Julian Champagnie. Like, these guys have been locked down on the perimeter. And you saw that besides Game 7, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was not really effective to the heights that he was in the regular season. And that is because he was getting guarded by these amazing perimeter defenders. And maybe they are allowed to be a little bit more aggressive because they have a Victor Wembanyama back there. And I think that is a part to it. But I also think it is a skill in of itself for a guy like Stephon Castle to defend as well as he did in that series. And I think that if the Spurs are going to win this series, they're going to have to match that intensity that they did in that series against SGA and match that against Jalen Brunson in this series. Daniel, what have you liked about the Spurs in this playoff run so far?
I think for me, it's just been consistency overall. I think Game 7 was, to me, I didn't expect Game 7 to go the way it did, to be honest. I thought it was going to be more, how we'd seen that whole series go. One team just blows out another. And I was fully expecting that again. But I feel like Game 7 was what the Spurs' real team was, in a sense, and not those, 3 games that they were blown out in. And just in general, I loved how Champagnie's streak on that Game 7 was crazy. The way
I
he
want
was
to look
able
up
to
what he had in terms of shooting numbers. Hold up. Continue.
Look that up for me, but I felt that insane because it's this team is full of players who it's you wouldn't expect. There's multiple options on this team, and you don't really get that on a lot of other teams. It's usually you would think, oh, it's Wemby and Castle, your 2 options. But no, this team, you have many options even on the bench. And I think that the depth and the consistency of this team is what has got them here.
Yeah. He went 6 for 10, 60% from 3 in that game against the Thunder. So insane numbers for Julian Champagnie. Sergio, what do you think about the Spurs playoff run?
I think the Spurs, they're just getting contributions from everyone. Everyone's contributing. Wemby is obviously, at the forefront of that. But, there's guys coming off the bench. In Game 1, De'Aaron Fox was hurt, so I believe Harper had to step into the starting lineup. And he played really well. He stepped up to the moment.
Yeah, Game 1 and 2.
Yeah, Game 1 and 2. So, guys are stepping up when they have to. They know their role. They know what they have to do to win. And, above all else, they just have heart. You saw the team's reaction when they won. Everyone was especially Wemby, they just want it more. They just, means something else to them. So, they show that on the court as well. So.
Yeah, and I think that it's been so impressive to see this team kind of knock out all these narratives that they're too young, they don't have enough experience. And they're kind of just, shoving that aside. And if they go on to win this championship, I think we kind of have to re-understand what experience is in the playoffs and how much it truly affects teams. Is this an anomaly for that kind of perspective, or is this a general trend that we're going to see over the next couple of years? I wanted to ask you guys this. What's an X factor player, maybe not like a Jalen Brunson or Victor Wembanyama, but a guy that's going to be behind those guys that you think can really sway this series? And let's go with one in for each team. Let's start with Sergio.
I think for the Knicks, it's going to be a guy like OG Anunoby. He's played defense really well. He can score when he needs to. I think he's been an unsung, hero for them in my opinion. And he can come through when it matters the most. There was a moment, I can't remember what it was, but there was a moment where, he stepped up big and it like kind of made the difference in the game. And then same thing on the Knicks,
Yeah.
Josh Hart too. Like he's another guy that can make a difference.
Daniel?
So for me, I was gonna take Cat. I think Cat's just overall, you know, it's just I forget the word, but basically two-way, being his defense as well as
Yeah.
being able to contribute on
Mm-hmm.
offense. I just think that Cat has been the addition that this Knicks team needed for a little while. I know that trade was it 2 years ago, a year ago, but I feel like it's finally paying off for what they had hoped for. And just it makes me a bit sad he couldn't have done this in Minnesota. But the fact that he's in this position to win a chip, I want Big Purr. I love Big Purr.
Yeah. All right.
And then for
Oh yeah, yeah.
Spurs,
Sorry, go ahead with your Spurs player.
Spurs, I really think it's Stephon Castle. I think
Mhm.
Castle is just this option behind Wemby that helps tie this team together a lot. I
Yeah.
I would just mainly his offense, really. Like just the way he's able to be that second option behind Wemby and still get these buckets that, you might not get it with no one else, but Castle's always gonna be there.
Yeah, Castle, I think that it's a very interesting matchup because he is a very aggressive downhill style of point guard that can get to the hoop and do really good in under the rim. And he might be matched up against, we don't know if it'll be Jalen Brunson, but I think that if whoever the guard is, all these guards and forwards are really good downhill. Jalen Brunson being the matchup that they could possibly exploit on the defensive side of the ball is going to be an interesting thing for the Spurs. I think if the Spurs can find that matchup and be successful in that, that's kind of like that kind of key to unlock this team, because once you get downhill on these guys, Wemby's going to have more opportunities on these lobs, and you might see, the efficiency of the Spurs continue to grow. Let's go with one player for me. I'm going to go for the Knicks, I'm going to go with Mitchell Robinson. I think Mitchell Robinson had a little bit of an injury scare going out of the Eastern Conference Finals, which supposedly was like a non-basketball injury. I can only come and speculate what that non-basketball injury could be. You think he punched something?
I punched the wall. He had to punch the wall.
I was thinking he like closed a door of a car on his hand or something like that. That's what I was thinking. But I mean, Mitchell Robinson has been kind of like the rebounding and defensive guy for this team against these bigs. He matched up really well against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in that Cavs series, and I think that if they want success in defending Victor Wembanyama, it's gonna have to be through Mitchell Robinson, obviously Cat as well, but I think Mitchell is gonna have a little bit more of a responsibility in also getting the boards on Wemby. I think that Victor, when he's on the glass and he's really good at getting rebounds, it's really difficult to get leads on this team. And I think if Mitchell Robinson can kind of sway Wemby away from the rim a little bit with his size and his strength, I would say, then I think that it could allow for some second chance points that I think the Spurs have given up, especially in that Thunder series. And for the Spurs, I'm going to go with Dylan Harper. This is a guy that has been coming off of the bench. Obviously, he did start in lieu of De'Aaron Fox being out in those first two games against the Thunder. But I think that he has a little bit of Jalen Brunson in him for me. I think he's starting to become really good at being that small guard that can really spark a change for your team. And obviously he's just in year one, which is still crazy to me that he's playing with the poise that he's playing with, but he allows this team to have another option at the guard position that can really hurt you going downhill. And we can see that the jump shot is starting to come along for him. He's had a couple of great performances. I thought his performance in Game 7 against the Thunder was really good. He had a really good performance in one of the games against the Blazers I think it was Game 3 in that comeback win, and I think that kind of has really sparked the ascension of this duo that is Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle to kind of grow into, something that is going to be a problem for NBA defenses as we continue into the next couple of years. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about is, because the series is starting tomorrow, let's go around the horn and let's talk about our prediction for this series. Sergio, let's start with you. Who do you think is going to win this series and in how many games? And what do you think is going to be the reason that they win the series?
All right, so I've got the Spurs in 7. I just feel like the Knicks are going to give them the Spurs a little bit more trouble than I think a lot of people are expecting. They're hot right now. They're coming off of 2 sweeps. They're coming off of a lot of rest. To connect it back to baseball, this kind of reminds me of, I think it was the 2019 World Series, the Astros and the Nationals. The Knicks kind of feel like the Nationals at this point, because the Astros already by that point were huge juggernauts. Everyone in the ALCS and the NLCS, it was the Yankees and the Astros, and then everyone's like, oh, who's going to get swept by the Yankees and that, or the Astros, whoever comes out of that series. And then it went to 7 games, and the Nationals came out on top. So I would not sleep on the Knicks. I also kind of want to see the city get destroyed anyway. Either way,
turn it to Gotham.
Yeah, I want to see a Batman come out of this finals one way or another. But I still think the Spurs. Yes. I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be too much for Cat to handle. I think he's going to need help like every play. Like, he scared away Chet Holmgren, and I mean we know that Chet doesn't really have that dog in him. But
I mean, is that really saying much now? Like, dude, Chet Holmgren. That's a whole other can of worms. That was one of the worst game 7 performances of all time.
Yeah. So we know Wemby can put the fear into someone, and I think he could put the fear into this entire Knicks team. I think it'll just be too much for them to handle, especially with all their depth and all their contributions they're getting off the bench. I think the Spurs will come out on top.
Okay. Daniel?
First off, I don't know why you would bring up the 2019 ALCS. But anyways...
He still has scars from his Yankees choking another one.
Lord.
It's all good. They were banging trash cans.
Yeah.
Anyways,
were they banging trash cans at that point?
Yeah, they were.
They were still banging
cheating,
trash cans,
but they weren't banging trash cans, but they were still cheating.
Yeah, that's what it was.
The buzzer allegations.
So I personally took Knicks in 6. It has a nice ring to it. But I think overall, like Sergio said, this Knicks team is hot. But the one other thing they know how to do well is rest. Because throughout those other series, I mean, you had 2 sweeps and then a series that went to 6. And they've had a lot of rest having to prepare for their next series. I think that's something that this team has just dealt with well. They know how to rest their players and come right back. And coming in, I think the Spurs team is just a bit exhausted. They went through the gauntlet playing the Thunder, going to 7. It was absolute, it took a little bit of a strain on them. And I think the Knicks can take advantage of that for first, maybe even second games, get 2 there. I think I could see them going 1 apiece, in San Antonio. But going back to New York, I think the Knicks take those 2 games and I think that's where the script flips, going back to San Antonio, taking 1, and just going back, winning it in 6.
I mean, I could definitely see that happen, for sure.
But I really think this series can go either way, though. I think the series can go to 7, too. That's how good both these teams are. And I think Cat and Mitchell Robinson are the way to stopping Wemby. I think 2 bigs, rotating off him, that's exactly what you need to stop him.
I mean, yeah, the Thunder try with Chet and Hartenstein, and I could honestly argue that, I mean, in their peak, they're probably, I think, at the same level, if not better, than the duo of Cat and Mitchell Robinson, but obviously, playoff Chet is a whole different animal, maybe not in the positive way, but I, being the resident Spurs fan here, hopefully my bias has not shown throughout this entire conversation. Oh, somehow Sergio's recording stopped, so we will. Well, I still see your face, but whatever. We'll ask him to come back on. But what were we just talking? Oh yeah, my prediction for the NBA Finals. I think that, without me being too biased about being a Spurs fan, I think that the Spurs just present a different issue for the Knicks that they have not shown this in this playoff run, and I think that is elite playmaking guards that can match with some 3-point shooting forwards. Just a more complete team than they've seen in this entire playoff run. I think that with the Spurs being battle tested as well, I think that is a big thing with this team. And I think in all reality the Knicks really haven't been as battle tested against the competition that they faced. I mean, they haven't faced the top 2 seed this entire playoffs, right? And I think that's gonna come into play here. I think the Spurs will probably have the advantage. I thought for a second that maybe with the Spurs having such an emotional win over the Thunder that they would come out flat in the first game of the series against the Knicks, and it would probably go more along what you said, where they'll probably lose game 1. But I think there's been enough of a break now between game 7 of the Western Conference Finals and game 1 of the NBA Finals that I think I'm more confident that the Spurs can win game 1 than I was a couple days ago, right? And so I think that they're going to win both games at home. I think they'll split on the road, and I think that the Knicks will probably. Well, I guess if I'm saying Spurs in 6, I guess they lose game 5 at home, and then they win game 6 on the road. That's kind of what I'm predicting. I think the Spurs win in 6. I think those guards, that perimeter defense, really hampers the playmaking ability of Jalen Brunson, and I think in turn also hinders the playmaking ability of there he is, he's back hinders the playmaking ability of Jalen Brunson and also those 3-point shooters. And I think that the 3-point shooting of the Spurs kind of catapults them to the NBA Finals win, and I think the Spurs end it in 6, which I think all in all, for this playoff run, I think they have been the best team in the playoffs. I know the Knicks will have a say in that, but I think if they were to win in 6, I think that just kind of caps off one of the greatest playoff runs that we've seen. Maybe not in the modern generation, maybe not in terms of the opponents, but I think for what the preseason expectations were for the Spurs, even me, I was happy with a 5 seed going into this year as a Spurs fan. And now we're sitting in the NBA Finals. And so I think for the expectations to be where they were going into this season, I think that the Spurs winning the championship, I think it will just go, be right at the end of the year. And I think this series is really going to show us the clash of, one, rust versus rest. Rust versus having a tough opponent in Game 7, right? I guess that is rust versus rest. What am I talking about? And also high-level opponents playing long series in the conference phase versus a team like the Knicks who have just boat raced everybody. They have a lot of rest, and they don't really necessarily have any issues. I think this is going to be an interesting series in that aspect. Spurs in 6. So Sergio's going Spurs in 6. I'm going Spurs in 6. Daniel is going with Knicks in 6. The FIFA World Cup is just around the corner. We're about 9 days away from it, and we wanted to start doing a recurring thing over the next couple of podcasts, which we'll upload every Tuesday and Thursday. We wanted to, just start talking about the World Cup, and today we're going to be talking about 3 players that we each are really excited to watch at this FIFA World Cup. Obviously, Daniel's got the Mexico third kit, which I actually really like the Mexico third kit. I think it's A really clean looking jersey. I love the tricolor on the shoulders and also on the logo. That's sick. And they wore that for their 1-0 victory over Australia in the friendly a couple of days ago. Who are you guys playing in your second friendly?
I think it's I think it's Panama. Let me check.
Interesting. Okay. Panama just got destroyed by Brazil.
Oh
6-2.
no, Serbia. It's Serbia.
Serbia. Okay, so that's even worse because Serbia lost 3-0 to Cabo Verde, and that's a insane result for them. But I hope everybody has their 3 players. Yeah, we're good with that.
Well,
and I will start with my first player that I'm really excited to watch at this year's World Cup. And I'm going to go a little bit in terms of, a really underrated guy that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, and then some higher level guys. I'll start with the higher level guy. I'm going to go with a pretty obvious one. It's going to be Lamine Yamal for Spain. This guy was a revelation at the last Euros, and I think for him to be heading into this tournament, and I think Spain are one of the favorites for this tournament, for him to be the lead man of Spain and try and win a World Cup for them for the first time since 2010, I think it's going to be really interesting how he performs. Now, Spain's group to me is actually one of the weaker groups in this World Cup. They have Cape Verde, they have Saudi Arabia, and they have an Uruguay team that I think is really reeling right now. And they had a couple of good performances against England, and but I still don't think that they're at the level that they were in the last couple of World Cups. So I think he's going to have the opportunity to really put a marker on these teams and then maybe head into the knockout stages with, a lot of goals under his belt. But this is a guy that's a phenom. A lot of young stars should be, striving to be like Lamine in terms of how he's progressed as a player. And I think that him heading into this World Cup with the expectations of being the favorite, I think it's such a interesting juxtaposition that you have such a young team with such high expectations, and I think that is really going to put forth a really fun tournament for Lamine Yamal. So I'm really excited for him and Spain heading into this World Cup. Daniel,
is he still expected to miss the first couple matches?
Yeah, I heard about that. I think he may, but I think if he does play, I think that he'll be able to. Even if he does miss, I think he'll still be able to create enough of an impact in the limited games he does play in the group stage to really, get this team going where it needs to be as we head into the latter parts of this tournament.
Yeah. So for my first pick, I'm gonna take a Mexico player no matter what. But first player I'm ready to see is Gilberto Mora. Him being I think it's 17. Just he's one of the youngest players playing in this World Cup, and just the fact that he got the call up and what historically, doesn't happen much for the Mexican national team. They don't really call young players up like this. So for it to happen and him to be basically what is supposed to be the future of Mexico's midfield, I'm very excited to see what he does. I think he's a lock at starter, and just what I've seen him do with that Tijuana team is just something that I haven't seen in a while, just for a Mexican player playing in the Mexican league at that. I think he's going to have a lot of eyes on him this World Cup. I want to see him create the chances he does when he's with Tijuana and just, ball out. I want him to ball out. I want him to get that move to Europe, and just I'm ready to see what he can do. He's very exciting player to watch.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that Gilberto Mora, for as young as he is, I do agree with you that it feels like over the last couple of years, they hadn't really been as, keen on getting these really young guys into the roster, and for him to be having an impact for this team in this time frame is really, exciting for the future World Cups, whether it's 2030 or 2034. Sergio, who do you have for your first
disclaimer? Pick? I don't know a lot about soccer, so this is my heart. These are my heart picks.
It's all good. Hey, we'll pick up the slack.
For me, fine. I'm gonna be locked in on Team Mexico. That's my team. So with that,
Okay.
I'm choosing 40-year-old Memo Ochoa. For I'm excited to watch him. It's probably his last World Cup. I don't know how much playing time
Hey,
he'll get because he's
I
40,
love the
but I'm excited to
hmm
watch him turn into a god, hopefully again for no reason. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of fun watching him last World Cup.
Yeah, I think that it's so crazy. I think this is what, sixth
Yeah,
World Cup, fifth
six.
World
Yeah,
Cup, or sixth World Cup?
sixth. It's sixth.
Sixth World Cup for a goalkeeper, and again, he wasn't supposed to start this year, but the injury to, why am I blanking on his name? You know, Daniel.
Balagon.
Malagon, Luis Malagon. The injury to him has kind of now forced Mexico to kind of choose. We'll see if he does
Still
start.
no
I still think that there is a possibility that one of the other two goalkeepers will start in this tournament. But if he does, I think it's just going to provide for some cinema.
Great
if,
entertainment value.
we see him one more time. Yeah. Dan, what do you think about Memo Ochoa starting another World Cup? If he were to.
Uh,
Because
not
I would be
opposed.
scared if I were you guys. But the group stage doesn't really present, besides South Korea, the group stage doesn't really present like that much winger or attacking threat besides South Korea, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it in a sense. Like, keeper is probably the one position where there's a lot more longevity in it, where you can be older and still be good at it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, look at Szczesny, for example. But just, I don't know. I feel like Memo has regressed a lot since the 2022 World Cup, as he hasn't played as much, realistically.
Yeah.
He's been bouncing around, these smaller European leagues these past couple years. And so just, I'm not opposed to it, but I'd rather want to see Tala Rangel in goal, at least for the first game, hopefully against
Yeah.
South Korea too. But I wouldn't be surprised if, they put Memo in for the last group stage game, because obviously everyone's going to want to see him play. I could see it
Mhm.
happening in the third game, or even just, being subbed on. Say you're winning 2-0, 85th minute, they'll put him in. But just overall, like, I don't think he's going to be the first option, but if they
Yeah.
have to go to him, they will.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to move on to my second player, and this is a little bit off the wall, but I think that you guys can understand. I'm going to go with Amad Diallo, the winger for Ivory Coast and Manchester United. And the reason is, obviously, Ivory Coast won the AFCON, I think it was, two AFCONs ago, not the last one, but the one before that. And, I think Diallo and Diamond present a beautiful winger pairing for the Ivorians going into this World Cup. And I'm going to be really excited to see him as a young player playing in his first World Cup. I believe it is his first World Cup. He has the experience at Manchester United, and to kind of translate that to an African team that I think really has a shot to make a deep run in this tournament. He's going to be playing some good defenses in Germany, who have the guys like Jonathan Tah and Nico Schlotterbeck, and then Ecuador, which I think is one of the best defenses in the entire world. And so having a guy like that face those guys, face those defenses, and possibly make a deep run in this tournament, I think it will be an interesting prospect, and I'm really excited to see what he can do for this team.
So speaking of Manchester United wingers, my second pick was Mateus Cunha.
Okay.
So he's
You see
probably
his
going
own
to be
goal?
rotation, unfortunately. But I think he's going to be more of a rotational player in this World Cup, because obviously you got the likes of Vinny and Neymar both on this squad. But
Yeah.
I just think the way he's played for this United team this season has, he's progressed himself a lot. I think he made a name for himself this year. Just, there were talks of selling him at one point, and now he's going to the World Cup with Brazil. It's just something that not every Brazilian gets to say that plays football. But I like his style of play on the wing. It's really fun to watch. I don't watch much English football outside of Chelsea, but I'll watch United because that team is fun and young now. But just in general, I think Cunha can do a lot this World Cup, mainly for himself. He might be a little bit selfish, but to progress himself in his career, and just for that team overall. Like, it just won't be much. like I said, because
Yeah.
he's gonna be overshadowed by the likes of Vinny. But
He
given
could
his
start
time,
at striker. Like
that is
I did
true.
see him in the nine, and so he could start there. But yeah, that'll be really. I think he'll be a really fun player to watch in a sea of fun players that play for the Brazilian national team. Sergio,
Yeah,
who's your second
The most
player?
obvious pick in the world, Kylian Mbappe. um, Last World Cup in the
Yes.
final, he was a lot of fun to
dictator.
watch. He scored 3 goals, I believe, and then just seeing like clips just
Yeah,
from
hat trick.
him, just spread out throughout the years. It's just so impressive to watch him play, and obviously he's like one of the biggest players in the world. So you expect a lot from him, and they'll make a deep run in
Hmm.
this tournament just because they won last time, and these huge expectations. Just the rest of the talent that they have on this team too.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting because Kylian Mbappe for Real Madrid, I don't think he played up to his level this year, and I think that this France team, 2018 they won the World Cup, 2022 they were runner-ups in the World Cup, and now again they're still kicking as favorites. I think they're the best team in the World Cup going into it right now, and but I think that's more along the players that are alongside Kylian Mbappe, right? Like a Michael Olise or a Bradley Barcola, and you have all of these players now that are going to be vying for a spot in the starting lineup. And I think Mbappe, for maybe not the first time, but for a couple of times now, is going to be tasked with being the guy for this team. And he didn't have that great I'm saying relatively because obviously he still had a great La Liga season, but I think relatively this guy didn't play up to the par that he needed to, and now he's gonna have an opportunity to do that in the World Cup. So I think it'll be really fun to watch Kylian Mbappe. All right, let's do this quick because we're on the clock. My third and final player, I had to go with the American. Obviously, I'm a USMNT fan, so I have to get my little propaganda out there as well. But I still think that this player is going to be super fun to watch come World Cup time, and I think he's probably the most informed player for the United States heading into this tournament. It's midfielder Weston McKennie. I think that Weston is probably on his day, if he plays up to up to a level, I think he's probably going to have the second highest peak behind Christian Pulisic on this team. Weston, I think, allows for this team to have a real dynamite in that midfield, and in this new 3-4-2-1 formation that Mauricio Pochettino has put in for this team, I think you can see Weston play in many different roles. Me personally, I think his best position for this team is probably playing as a cam or I'm not going to say, because he plays literally everywhere. He could play wing back if he wanted to. I think playing cam is probably the best position for him. My issue with that is that you have to then start Berhalter or Roldan in the CDM role alongside Tyler Adams. And I don't know if I trust either of those guys. I was pulling my hair out watching, especially Christian Roldan. Sebastian Berhalter I've kind of, come around to a little bit. But watching Christian Roldan play soccer, in that game against Senegal, it's pulling my hair out. And so I would love to see Weston play as more of a deep-lying playmaker, maybe have Pulisic paired up with a guy like Malik Tillman or Gio Reyna in those 10 roles. But Weston provides something so unique for this team that I think that he's become a better player than he was in 2022. And I think I'm so excited to see him play against some of these midfields against Australia, which I think is a pretty good midfield. Paraguay, I would say their midfield is okay. And then Turkey, they have amazing cams, and we'll see which place on the field he plays during that game. But the opponents present something. I think the moment presents something unique for this team because Weston McKennie is going to be one of the big three players, in my opinion, for this team if they want success at this World Cup. And I think that the last thing I'll say about Weston McKennie, he's an absolute fighter jet when it comes to, heading the ball off of crosses and free kicks. And so I think that he provides something that only Chris Richards, I would say, also provides, that is an aerial threat that is going to be a real problem for defenses come the World Cup. So Weston McKennie is my third and final player.
And just be happy you don't gotta watch Berhalter ball no more.
Greg Berhalter ball, not Sebastian Berhalter ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But so my third pick, had to take a Chelsea player. It would have, without a doubt. I couldn't say that. I had to take him. Moises Caicedo.
Okay.
I think best CDM in the Prem. Had another great season despite Chelsea having a terrible year for Chelsea standards.
Rodri. Okay.
But just I think the way this guy possesses gets rid of the ball, and his defensive ability to make these plays and make these stops are what has elevated his game to the next level. And him being in a team where you have arguably the two best center backs in the world right now, with William Pacho and what's the name? What's the first name? I'm just saying Hincapié. But
Hincapié, yeah.
Yeah, Hincapié. But just he's that third defensive piece with, like you said, Ecuador probably being the best defense in this World Cup. He plays a part in that. Because, he can control that midfield well. But when he has to drop back, he is able to drop back successfully. And I think that helps this Ecuador team a lot. Now, I know that attack isn't as strong as you would like it to be, but I still think this Ecuador team can make a big run into the knockouts. Granted, may have to play a little bit of haram ball, but with that defense, it's possible.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Moises Caicedo is, again, one of the best CDMs in the world, and I think that if they want any sort of, pressure going forward and having some success against these defenses, then it's going to have to start with him, right? I think that he scored a goal in the last World Cup. He's probably going to have to score a lot more goals in this one, at least one or two. All right, Sergio, who's your last player for FIFA World Cup players to watch?
So I've got another Team USA player, but not for probably the reason that you think. I'm gonna pick Giovanni Reyna
I think I know who this is.
He got kicked off of the team last time. Excuse me, for behavioral issues. So hopefully he's mature enough over 4 years to not let that happen again. But that remains to be seen. But he's a name too. I think I've heard of his name before that too. Anyway, he's talented. So we'll see if he gets kicked off the team again.
No, I think he's grown for sure. I think that to me he should be starting alongside Pulisic. I know a lot of people will say Tillman. I really like Tillman as well, but I think Gio Reyna is just a different type of playmaker alongside Fuller and Balogun. And I think that he could provide something, but beyond the whole club situation and him not playing as much. I think Giovanni Reyna could be a really good piece for this USMNT when it goes into this World Cup. So those are our 3 FIFA World Cup players to watch. All right, let's finish it off with our final segment of the day. We're going to call this Running the Relay because this will be a quick segment. You see the pun that I did there. We are going to quickly rip off our NHL Stanley Cup predictions. Stanley Cup starts today, and I thought it was going to start alongside the NBA Finals, but I think they did the right decision and went opposite, one day ahead. So, Sergio, let's start with you. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup?
I've got the Hurricanes in 6. They've got a great squad. Vegas has been here before, but the team's changed a lot since then. So I think the Hurricanes will take this one out.
All right, Daniel, who do you have winning the Stanley Cup Finals?
So I'm going to take Hurricanes in 4. I think that this Golden Knights team got very lucky being hot. They were a below 500 team going into these playoffs. And I just think they got hot at the right time. But I think that hot streak is unfortunately over, and Hurricanes sweep them in 4.
All right, and then just like you predict the Hurricanes are going to sweep them, we're going to sweep as we all pick the Hurricanes. I also have the Hurricanes winning this series, but I have them winning in 5. I think it's very difficult to kind of look at the Golden Knights. They beat the Colorado Avalanche, which I thought the Avs were by far and away the favorite to win this whole tournament, championship, and they just were not good in that series against the Vegas Golden Knights. I think it was more that the Avs weren't good versus the Golden Knights being great, right? And I think the Hurricanes they're due a championship. I think they'll finally get it done, and they'll lift that Stanley Cup trophy come the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I have Hurricanes in. What did I say? Hurricanes in 5? Yeah, I'll say Hurricanes in 5. All right, well, thanks for watching this first episode of The Relay. We have new episodes happening every Tuesday and Thursday, so we'll hope you'll be back. Please follow, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.